This is a Voyescape podcast. You can find all of our travel podcasts from around the world at voyescape.com.
Love it or hate it, Gold Coast brings the beach. This week, we're going to talk about one of Australia's favorite coastal destinations. David, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great, and I am definitely firmly in the love it camp.
Me too. Me too. You know, I was on I think it was my most recent trip to Australia. I was there for a conference and given a variety of destinations to choose as a pre or a post trip to the conference. Gold Coast was a place that I had heard about over and over and over again from Australians as I traveled all over the country and had never visited. And so it was my number one selection and went. And you know what? There is some controversy whether it's a cool place or not a cool place. And I absolutely loved every minute of it. And I know you love it too. And let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely a polarizing place, particularly for Australians, as you say. It is kind of. I always describe it to people as like the Miami of Australia. It's big. It's brash. It's got great sun, surf, lively urban atmosphere. But I had two very different experiences in Surfers Paradise, which is kind of right at the heart of the Gold Coast. One when, I first went there when I was 18 as a backpacker. It was my first trip abroad, living with a group of Canadians in an apartment, beachfront there, and had that beach experience in Surfers Paradise, and probably one of the funnest times of my life in the few months that I spent there. And then much more recently, together with my family on a family vacation, learned to surf trip for my kids again. And it was one of their favorite destinations that they've ever been as well. So, spanning 20 years probably in between those trips, and had a great experience both times.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, I think there's kind of at least two Gold Coasts, right? I mean, there is the Gold Coast that is beautiful glassy skyscrapers, condos and hotels right on the beach. And then there's this other Gold Coast that I got to experience as well on my trip, which is older neighborhoods, more established neighborhoods, places like Burleigh Heads, that have a longer history, family owned businesses, and it's a completely different feeling there. And the beauty of this destination is that you can experience both. You can go, I mean, I'm not against a beautiful hotel, that has a sweeping view of the beach. Being able to take surf lessons, being able to swim in the beautiful water, but also go down and see some of these other restaurants, bars, businesses. I'm going to talk about a business where you can make your own surfboard, um, breweries, distilleries, and you have all of that as well. And it's just a few minutes away. And I know that was also your experience.
And theme parks too is the other thing too. This is probably like
Yes.
for Australians, this is why it is a huge destination for a lot of Australian families. You've got Warner Brothers Movie World, you've got SeaWorld, these huge, family amusement parks there. But let's start off with kind of where to stay, and what have been your go-to hotels when you've been on the Gold Coast?
Well, I've got two that I want to talk about, and they are very different. The first is the JW Marriott, which I guess the two places I'm going to talk about are the two faces of Gold Coast. So JW Marriott is much more of a tropical beach resort, interlocking beautiful pools surrounded by this greenery, this foliage, this almost rainforest feel right by the water. And so this is a place where you can look out on the ocean from your room. You can go down, read a book, and which I did, right? Read a book by the pool all day and just enjoy a resort experience right on the beach. And then the other one, also right on the beach, completely different, which is a place called Tessa's on the beach. It's right there in the name. Um, Old school motel, and I mean motel, where you drive up to the door, you walk up, if you're on the second floor, you're taking the stairs to the second floor. Um, and they've taken it, renovated it, embraced the 19 sort of 50s motor court feel of this place, made it into a mid-century modern, drive up to the door, beautiful place, stylish, great little bar, an area in the front with beach chairs where you can look out and just hear the ocean. And it's right on this beautiful boardwalk that every single night that I was there, I would walk up and down the boardwalk. You'd meet up with local people, chat with them about, how's your night going? People were very friendly. And you have this view of the beach, but also back to Gold Coast. So you can look back and see all these high rises, these skyscrapers. And they're just, you feel like you're part of it, but you're also separate. And then go back to your I love a motel. We're gonna talk about that maybe in a future episode. I love motels. So it brought back a lot of family road trip memories, but it was right there on the beach. So I know you've got a couple places that you love.
Yeah, two places. One that I would say is some great points and maybe one negative point about it, which is the Sheraton Grand Mirage Resort. What we really liked about it is it's a little bit more remote location. You're not right in the middle of Surfers Paradise. You're in a little bit more isolated beach off on its own, luxury beachfront location. Great rooms, quite a large resort, and really nice lagoon pools and stuff as well. The only downside I would say is it had this massive buffet breakfast with a lot of choice, but I have never seen a busier buffet breakfast anywhere in the world, anywhere in my life. And I don't know if it was there, it was a big convention or an Australian holiday, but it was mayhem. It was like so many people at that buffet breakfast. It was a lot going on there. But still a good spot. And if you're a Marriott Bonvoy points collector, it's a place that you can sometimes stay on pretty cost effectively on points. And then a chain that we've talked about, both of us I know have stayed at in various trips to Australia, QT, that's an Australian chain, the QT Gold Coast, another sort of trendy design forward hotel, modern atmosphere, easy access to Surfers Paradise. Certainly one that if you want to be a bit more close to the action, but you also want a hotel that's a bit more, unique, quirky style. That one's a good choice as well. I know we talked about staying at their hotels in Melbourne before. Their Gold Coast property, pretty similar, a good solid choice as well.
I do love QT. I mean, it is sort of quirky by choice. I mean, they're beautiful hotels. They have beautiful luxury accommodations, but they're quirky by choice, and I love a QT. So that is definitely something that I would recommend as well. When you go to the Gold Coast, what do you like to do? What do you keep busy with?
I mean, Surfers Paradise definitely lives up to its name, right? It is a phenomenal surf beach. You can literally walk for, 2 hours plus from one end of the beach to the other with this massive white sand beach with perfect surf conditions pretty much year round. So that's definitely very much worth going for. And there's a great surf school that we stumbled upon there. Wanted to surf Gold Coast on a beach called Dog Beach. As you guess from the name, there's a bunch of dogs. This is where everybody hangs out with their dogs locally. So you want to hang out with some cool local dogs and go surfing. It's a good spot to do it, and pretty cost effective as well. We also really
Yep.
like.
Sydney, I just want to stop you for a second. How did the surfing go? I have a list of things personally that I'm very bad at in life. One of them is surfing. I've discovered this about myself. Tell me just a note before you go,
That was
onto
good.
your
It
next
was
thing.
really good, actually.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this on previous episodes. I've surfed at probably some of the best surf beaches in the world, and probably stood for a combined 20 seconds in all of those trips, in all of those beaches. But probably at least 15 of those 20 seconds were at this beach. This was one of the better surf experiences for me, and my kids had way better luck than I did. They both did phenomenally well there, and the instructors were.
If you stood for 15 seconds, that's 15 seconds more than me. So that's 15. Maybe I stood for 1 second. But anyway, sounds fantastic. And yeah, what else?
The other, this is a bit of I would say a can't miss actually, and it's kind of what to do, but also where to eat as well. A place we stumbled across on our last trip called Miami Marquetta, which if I remember correctly, I think it was up in Burley Head. It definitely wasn't right in Surfers Paradise itself. It was a good like 20-30 minute drive from Surfers Paradise, up more towards the Byron Bay direction. And what it was this like big night market that had like a really good multicultural food scene, street foods from all around the world, live music, had kind of a nightclub built into it. Well, so definitely like a very lively atmosphere, community atmosphere as well. Artisanal desserts. They had lamingtons, which are a popular dessert in Australia. Probably the biggest lamington, the size of your head, that you could go get there. And just what was cool about it is there's probably, I don't know, 15, 20 different street market style stalls with different styles of food from all around the world. Just really well done, really cool atmosphere. So that would definitely be a place I would recommend.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a lot of good food in the Gold Coast. I'm just gonna very quick. I have a couple recommendations on that one as well. Just before I get into that, I just wanted to mention one of my favorite things to do there is, well, I don't know if it's I did it on one trip, was to go to a place called S Lab. And it is again, you talked about Surfer's Paradise. You talked about riding waves, and this is a place where you can actually make your own surfboard. So you can actually have the experience of sanding it, of being involved in the design, and maybe the best part, because Australia, not close to a lot of other places. It's a little ways, from Canada, the United States, Europe. It's a long flight. They will ship your surfboard to you. So you can, if you finish it in time, you can go to that surf school, ride your surfboard, and then they'll ship it to you so you can have it at home. I'm sure there's an additional cost to that, but that was one of the cooler experiences that I had there.
Very cool. How
Um,
how long does it take you to shape your own surfboard?
well, I'll say, I mean, it's probably a multi-day process if you take it from start to finish. I was there on a kind of a truncated, highlights tour of Gold Coast. So we spent like one afternoon there, and they made us feel good. But like we got in there and we like sanded the surfboard a little bit, and they actually have surf pros that are associated with the shop, who actually came in and spoke to us, and it was a media event. So for us, it was like an hour, an hour of sanding, and probably not even that. But I know they do offer a longer term where you really do have a hand in designing your own surfboard, which is, pretty cool experience. So, and it did. I mean, that surfboard, they shipped it all the way back to Canada, and so if I ever, I try to go back and do the surfing again, try to get up on a board. I've surfed in Barbados, in Hawaii, and a couple other places. It's always been a fairly large disaster, but if ever, I decide to go and try to get up on a board again, I do have my own surfboard, which I'm very excited about. And talking about coastal places that are right on the beach. There is a very famous restaurant, one of my favorite places in Gold Coast, and it's called Rick Shores. We would say Rick, you and me, David, we would say Rick Shores. Locally, they would say Rickshaws with it's a very bad Australian accent right there, but it sounds like they're saying rickshaw, like the traditional conveyance, in Hong Kong. But Rick Shores, and they serve up a beautiful Moreton Bay bug, which is kind of, if you think crab, lobster in that family. It doesn't sound very appetizing, the word bug, but it is a really delicious bit of seafood, and it is right on the coast. When I was there, it was actually a bit of a stormy day. It felt like the waves were going to crash almost right into the restaurant. Of course, they didn't, but you felt you couldn't be closer to the water and not be in the water. So you're eating beautiful, beautiful, beautiful seafood from the water, and you're right on the water. And I know you have a story about the same place. That well, just talk us through that.
Yeah, I mean, we actually rickshaws, as you say, super popular place locally, and the Moreton Bay bug is definitely something everybody needs to try when you're in the Gold Coast. We tried to get in, and it was too busy the day we were there, and we didn't have reservations. So I guess that would be a recommendation: is if you are going, definitely book ahead. But right upstairs, there was a place called the Burley Pavilion, which another beachside favorite, much more casual dining, I would say. But really stunning views of the Pacific from there, fresh seafood, modern Australian dishes. They had a DJ there in the early evenings for sunset. Great place for just sort of relaxed lunch, sunset drinks. So if you can't get into rickshaws, there's always that option upstairs. And even if you can, it's its own worthwhile destination as well. Would definitely recommend Burley Pavilion.
Fantastic, fantastic. I know we're getting a little tight on time. Do you have any final? I have one thought on a can't miss. Do you have any can't misses?
Well, what I would recommend for my can't miss is, I mean, I think if you're going all the way to Australia and you're spending some time on the Gold Coast, the Great Barrier Reef is something you really need to do when you're in Australia. It is a must do destination, and increasingly the southern part of the Barrier Reef, which is the closest to the Gold Coast, is becoming a more and more popular diving destination. It's probably the part of the reef that's been least impacted by climate change so far. And you can do it as a day trip from Surface Paradise. There's float planes that leave every morning out to Lady Elliot Island. A great way to get out to the Barrier Reef. So if you don't have a lot of time, you're going to the Gold Coast and you still want to get that Barrier Reef experience, there's definitely the ability to do that out of the Gold Coast and do it pretty quickly, and pretty cost effectively as well to Lady Elliot Island.
Fantastic, fantastic. And my recommendation, and I've been on the Great Barrier Reef and can't recommend it enough. And you're absolutely right that the bleaching and the effects of global warming are probably less, as you know, in Gold Coast. You're further south, you're further away from that warming. My recommendation very different. It's just to do a brewery and a distillery tour with this company called Kif and Culture. And they took us to this really cool place called Grandad Jack's. They make a whiskey there, and it is a Grandad Jack. The actual Grandad Jack was a barber, and he had these. So they still, in honor of that, they have in the distillery they have a barber chair where you can get a $5 haircut. At least when I was there, it was $5. It may have increased now with inflation, but so you can go get your haircut, have a whiskey. That sounds like a pretty good afternoon to me. So Kif and Culture, Grandad Jack's. That's my final thought. Great to chat with you, David, as always, and great to revisit Gold Coast.
That does sound like a good recommendation. I know you always love a good haircut around the world. You've documented your haircuts in barber shops in probably 100 plus countries that I know you.
Yeah, everything from a Cambodian fruit market to, I mean, you name it. I've had my haircut on ships. I've had my haircut in Ethiopia. I've had my haircut, and it is one of my favorite things. You get a little bit of the culture. You get to talk to a local person, and you get a haircut at the same time. Which it's getting quite dark here, but I need a haircut. So maybe my next haircut around the world is going to be here on board the ship, just off the coast of Australia, or off the coast of Brazil. We've been talking about Australia. So yeah, great to chat with you, David.
Thanks, Tim. I'll look forward to catching up next week. And as always, if people are enjoying what we're doing, would love to hear from some of our listeners. So please go on to the Apple Podcast Store, onto Spotify, give us a review, give us your comments, and would love to know about destinations that you would like us to cover next.
Can't wait to chat with you again.
Thanks.